Yeah, it's funny. I discovered this little notebook the other day in my childhood room, and I found all of these like songs, and I was honestly like, dang, I think I was better back then. But um I no, for real, I was like, this is some I was like, I was depressed back then or something.
Hey, Ron, what's up, man?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, for sure. It's so nice to get to chat for a little while.
Uh, yeah, no, dude, I appreciate it. And congratulations on the song coming out today.
Thank you. It is definitely a pretty crazy feeling for me. It's been a long one. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is a podcast about you and your journey in music, and we'll talk obviously about the new song and what you got going on coming up as well.
Incredible. Well, I'm very excited.
Sweet. Well, I did read you're from Ithaca, New York. Is that what I saw?
Yes, upstate New York, Ithaca. It's a beautiful little college town about 4.5 hours from the city.
Yeah. Ex-ambassador guys are from there.
That is correct. Yes. So my roommate who I moved out here with from Ithaca is cousins with the lead singer of Ex Ambassadors. So we're
Oh, it's
close.
Sam, right on. Yeah, and his brother's in the band too. He plays keys.
Yes, I mean they are some talented musicians, and they very much embody a lot of the qualities that Ithaca tends to embed in its musicians. So
Yeah,
yeah.
don't they do like a festival up there of some
Yeah,
sort?
they did one for a while, and they were like, "We'll be back next year," and it's been 5 years. So
Oh.
that's how it goes.
Like,
But
okay, right on. Well, so tell me about Ithaca a bit. I know you said it's college town. What was it like growing up there?
yeah, so it's a center for people from all around the world. Obviously, we have Cornell University, which brings in people from all walks of life. It was a big kind of center in the hippie movement. The
Mhm.
Grateful Dead played like a very iconic show up there, and so my parents, like many, are kind of brought there by the strange nature and hippie movement. They met at a herbalist medicine school in Ithaca and
That's
raised
awesome.
yeah, it's pretty cool, but they raised me very much just as a wild child in the woods running around, and just it's a town, it's full of waterfalls and lush forests and music from all over the world, and it's a really beautiful place to grow up. So
That's amazing. And you were I don't know if you want to get into this, but you were a really competitive snowboarder, right? Early on, and then that kind of led to something, and then an accident. Now you're doing music, but
yeah.
was that kind of like like your whole life was just mainly up until that point was just all about snowboarding?
Yeah, I would say in sixth or seventh grade, snowboarding kind of took over my life. It was kind of it wasn't really supposed to. It was more just all of my friends knew how, and I didn't know how, and I never liked to be the worst at something, so I just started very serious. And once I realized that my mountain was probably the smallest mountain in the entire world, I was like, all right, I should probably, explore other options. And it just kind of took me out to Colorado, and I started riding with some really, really talented people out there. And it did become my whole life for a while. I think I've always needed something to pour myself into, and snowboarding was a great outlet for that. It's very hard to think about anything else while you're snowboarding. So it was almost meditative for me. And
Mhm.
yeah, a little bit of a injury kind of ended that chapter and brought me into this next chapter, which is music. But I'm always very thankful for snowboarding and what it has offered in my life. So
Sure. I mean, that must have still been obviously really, traumatic. And not only that, but like that's what you were doing, right? And that you're putting all your
yeah,
energy into that. And then to have that kind of taken away from you.
yeah,
Um,
it was rough. It was rough, but I think it's just funny. It was a good example of how you may have the clearest plan for yourself, but life also has a plan for you. And I mean, I wouldn't trade where I'm at for anything now. And so I go back home to my childhood room, and I have, like notes up on the wall that are like, you will be in the Olympics by 19. And I'm 19 now, and I'm not in the Olympics, but I am doing some other pretty amazing things.
I
So
was gonna say, yeah. On the other side of that, you're doing some pretty incredible stuff as a 19-year-old.
yeah. So I'm excited. But
Very cool, man. With like as far as music goes, was that something you were just into, or like did you play an instrument growing up?
yeah, so again, Ithaca kind of is a very musical town. So while my parents were not musicians, they were lovers of music. And I grew up in I kind of call it like a broken instrument household. We had an out of tune piano and some guitars missing some strings. And I don't know, my parents just, it was always just listen to everything. So almost the process of switching from listening to music to creating music was seamless. There was never a question of like, oh, yeah, why don't I just write a song, or why don't I just pick up the guitar and try to learn it? That was very natural in my family to kind of do. So I didn't really know that it was strange to make music, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. And what was
Yeah.
the first instrument you learned? Was it just maybe banging on the piano in your house, or one of those guitars that were missing strings?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, probably singing. I definitely like always was sung to sleep by my mom and always was singing. But I would say the first instrument outside of the voice was the piano. And then later, kind of the classic tale of I took a guitar lesson and they were like, here's the scale. And I was like, I'm quitting guitar. So I quit guitar and then relearned how to play like an Ed Sheeran song on YouTube, which is like really a tale as old as time. But it's that was my kind of
Right on. Like how quickly, I mean, once snowboarding kind of ends for you and you have this accident, are you like just looking for like a outlet, or how did you kind of follow then into music?
it's a good question. I think even before snowboarding was ever part of my life, I have a few moments where music, you could see the beginnings of something musical happening, whether it be, I remember singing once at some little like open mic thing, and like a cute little girl walked up to me, and I was like 12 or something, or 11 or 10. And she was like, I like your voice. And I was like, oh, this might be a nice outlet. But I think really it was more just the closest thing to me that had been kind of consistent throughout my entire life after snowboarding ended was music. And it just somehow naturally started to fall into my life. And then I think I met my best friend who I moved out here with, and he started to just teach me the ropes of recording songs and writing full songs. And I think once that happened, I mean, as a lot of, as I do, I was kind of just like, all right, like, let's see how far I can take this. And that very quickly grew to being like, let's dedicate my life to this, which, is an interesting habit of mine, but I think it tends to pay off. So,
Sure. Were you like like meeting your best friend that you live in LA now, right?
I do live, I don't like to say I live here yet because I haven't fully committed mentally, but I do have a lease here. So I guess I do live here.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're staying in Los Angeles at the time.
Yes. Yeah.
But when did you meet your friend that you ended up moving out there? Were you in high school at that point?
Yeah. So I was a junior in high school. It was the first day of chemistry class, and this kid walks in and spills his water all over my notebook. And I was kind of like, I was like, damn. And he sat down at the table to apologize, and very quickly we started talking about music, and we ended up starting to just skip classes and go to the practice room where they had a little piano in the school and just write songs. And so we had never met before then, but it was one of those relationships where quickly it almost feels like you had known each other for your whole life.
Mhm.
And then fast forward to, I guess, a year and a half after that, we both moved out here. So
Wow. When you said you sang in that open mic night or whatever, and the girl
mhm.
came up to you, um, were you doing a lot of things like that? Like, did you sing in the chorus or choir or anything in school, or
Yeah, I
not
think
as much?
at that point I did sing in choir all throughout high school. But I think again, it was just, I had just sung so much growing up, sang along to songs, heard my parents singing to me to sleep and things like that. So it was more just, I was always singing things. It was never a like, oh, I sing. It was more just inherent quality of mine to randomly be humming or whistling, and probably annoying many people throughout the day with that habit.
Okay. And what about songwriting? When did that become a part of your life?
Yeah, it's funny. I discovered this little notebook the other day in my childhood room, and I found all of these like songs, and I was honestly like, dang, I think I was better back then. But um I no, for real, I was like, I was like, I was depressed back then or something. But it was songwriting. I think like for me personally, I was writing little snippets of songs. Maybe it would be like 5 lines, and they would rhyme, but I would more call it poetry. So
Mm,
just words without melody at that point. But the first time I like really wrote a song would have been that year, that's junior year of high school. So, like about 2 years ago.
Okay. And with that book of stuff you found, will you use any of that, you think, or is that just a different time period?
No, I
Mm.
would. I just need to remember who that was about. It feels very important to me because I cannot quite place who I was writing about in that time. And to be honest, there's some quite intense things that I was saying, and I would really love to sit with it a little longer and remember before I just start piecing it together. I think I'm kind of growing to really need a story to talk about. When I first started creating, it was a lot more just because I thought it sounded cool, and now it's becoming a lot more necessity and just I crave understanding myself and my thoughts, and so I need to figure that out first. But
Okay. Yeah, I like that. So you said you started writing there in junior year. What was the first, like, putting out a first song, or were you showing anyone your songs, or how are you kind of getting these things down, or were you just playing them?
yeah, so that my roommate Kai, who I met in that chemistry class, he's an amazing producer as well as an artist. So he kind of, I had known how to play the guitar and piano at that point, and I had started to write songs with him. But then the process of recording was completely foreign to me. I couldn't tell you back then a single thing about it. And he was like, "Oh, there's these things called DAWs where we record the guitar into and the vocals onto." And so we kind of went to a little studio in our hometown and just made like 3 or 4 songs, and one of them actually sounded pretty good, and we just put it out for us and for the high school, and it was kind of a cool little moment to put out my first song. But again, it was only put out because it sounded cool. There was no meaning in the song, there was no necessity in the song. It didn't really touch on anything current in either of our lives, but that was kind of the first song I put out.
And did you get like a positive response? Like, was that kind of terrifying? Like, or like putting a song out to all the kids that you grew up with,
Yeah,
and
I think I think it was, it was received different by different people. Like the my friends, my guy friends were maybe a little less thrilled with it, but then a lot of other people seemed to really love it. And I think, to be honest, I didn't really care. I mean, I'd moved away for snowboarding, and it was kind of just like, oh look, he's doing another thing. Like now he's putting out a song. So it's, I don't know, it wasn't too big of a worry for me, but yeah.
okay. And
Yeah.
did you get like, did that go up on Spotify or anything like that, or is it just is
Yeah,
that
we put it on Spotify. Again, I didn't know back then, but I was like, okay, I got $200 saved up. Like, let's like figure out how to market this thing. And in hindsight, I totally just bought a ton of fake streams, but it still looked kind of cool to have 10,000 streams on my song, even if they were totally fake streams. But yeah,
who cares, right?
yeah.
And then, well, from there, when was like the next, like, I know you had a like kind of a big moment, right? Like with one of your songs that started kind of buzzing and attracting the attention of people. Like, how much later down the line was that? And or were you
Yes.
still in high school at that time?
So I put out my first song, Closure. It was, I think, August 1st, 2020. Or 2019 or 2020, I think 2020. And then I was in high school. I had a whole senior year of high school. I put out a few more songs. And then right before graduating, I graduated on my birthday in 2021. I kind of was sitting there and I was like, how do I get to meet, like, I need to meet more people in this industry. I'd pretty much set my mind on moving to LA at that point, just because I knew that once I was in LA, I could meet everybody I needed to meet. But I wanted to know at least 1 or 2 people before doing that. So I just started going to artists' pages that I liked on Instagram and kind of just going through their followers and just cold emailing everybody who had an email in their bio. And I ended up meeting 1 or 2 people that way. I met this lady who works for this company, BMI. Her name is Samantha Cox, and she
Uh-huh.
introduced me to a few people in Los Angeles. And so the day I graduated, I packed up my car, and a few weeks later, I drove out to Los Angeles. And I really didn't know anybody. I had nothing going on for me, but I just started to keep cold emailing people, follow up 2 or 3 times until they responded, probably just to tell me to stop emailing them. But uh, I ended up meeting 1 or 2 producers who are now really close friends of mine, and we ended up writing a song. And that song got the attention of this lady, Cara Dioguardi, who ended up, kind of mentoring me a little bit, and eventually down the road signing me to my deal. So it was just, it was just a lot of cold emailing and trusting that, I had something special, even if nobody else saw it at that time.
I love that. That's cool that you were able, I mean, to get a response from somebody at BMI. I mean, people that don't know, that's like a huge, huge
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah. Well, it was funny. It's just, again, I messaged her once, week went by, nothing. I responded again, nothing. I ended up messaging her 4 times before she responded and got on a call. And I still don't know what she saw back then because the songs had nothing. But I like to think that, she is a very special person, and very grateful for just everything she's done for me. But I do think you need to believe in it first, and it's pretty easy to kind of create the rest. So
Yeah, you got like from what I was just doing research, you've had some like you got some scholarship, right? Or is that through BMI or no?
yeah, that was a really beautiful thing too. Also, a lot of kudos to Samantha for that one. But it's
Was
BMI
that
does.
early or later down the line?
That was after I'd signed, but probably before
Okay.
thing had kind of come out on Spotify or anything. I mean, I don't know. I'm
Okay.
still early in the career, so everything is pretty early on for me.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I didn't know if that was like while you're in high school and still cold emailing people, but you hadn't moved to LA at that point.
I'd moved to LA at that point.
Okay.
But that was post LA.
Got it. Well, tell me about that real quick. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so that's a BMI does this thing every year where they induct kind of just legends into the Songwriter Hall of Fame. And pretty much
Mhm.
everyone you can think of is inducted into it. This year they were inducting the Isley Brothers, and I think Mariah Carey and a few other people. And in doing this, they also give a scholarship out to a few up and coming writers, which is kind of like just bringing them into the community. You get to go to this event, which is pretty much just like the top industry people, and then these like massive artists getting inducted, and you get to just watch it all happen. And I got to see Pharrell speak, and I got to see Mariah Carey speak, and see performances from just some legends like Smokey Robinson, and just some amazing musicians. And also I got to like bring my dad there, and it just happened to be on my birthday, and it was just a beautiful, it's like you sometimes forget how far you've come, because the further you rise, the more your goals rise. And by the time you hit a goal, you already have 10 new ones. And that was one of those moments where I was just like looking around me like, wow, like this existed in my head and now it's happening here. And it was one of the best nights of my life, easily. So
That's so cool. Yeah, it's like one of those things where you kind of have to almost go back and ground yourself. You're like you said, you had a goal, and then when you reach that, you've already in
yeah,
your mind surpassed so far ahead of that. Like I'm going for this now, but
yeah.
you're at that goal, and to think when you set that goal, that being able to tell yourself, yeah, you're gonna get to that point. Like that's just so
And just take
so
a
cool.
moment. And yeah, I even just had that this morning. I just stepped outside and I just stopped for a second, took a breath, looked up at the sun, and just thanked whatever. I'm not very religious, but I do feel I'm spiritual, and I just thanked whatever is helping guide me, and myself and my family and just everybody, because it's like if you don't take those moments, life will just keep going past you. And maybe I will get to the places I want to be, but then I'll also look back and be like, wow, I really never stopped once to just look around. And I really am working on doing that more, because time does seem to just move quicker and quicker. And I don't know, it's a little scary at times, but
Yeah, for sure. Was there a certain song or that really kind of changed everything for you? I know obviously the song that you just released today
yeah.
has had a lot of buzz prior to it coming out, but like before that one, what was the first like big, like did you have a viral moment, or like a lot of people being had eyes on you due to one particular song or moment in your career?
Yeah. There was kind of these two songs close together, nothing like, nothing viral, but it went from like, okay, I have a few hundred people who I could probably say listen to my music, to being like, oh, now there's 10,000 people who, and then like maybe now there's 50,000 people. And that, it's hard to quantify numbers when you're just looking at them at numbers, but I'm like, that's
Right.
more than the population of my hometown. And then, it's these, you just see little 3.6 M, and you don't realize that's like countries worth of people who see these.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, these two songs, this one called Terrified to Love and another one called Two People, were kind of the first songs that brought so many people into my world, and just like I don't know, it's really starting to become a family. And those were the first two songs that kind of gave me some eyes and opened up my world to some really amazing listeners. So
Was that done through just people finding it on like Spotify or like a playlist, or was it done like on TikTok or Instagram, or like how
yeah,
did that people start finding it?
it was TikTok. I think TikTok is kind of the discovery platform now. It is cool. It's almost like the people are curating the music.
Oh
Um,
yeah. It's wild
I,
how that is,
it,
right?
it's
It's like a
wild.
level playing field.
It is. It's a level playing field, and it's so much more of a level playing field than people even think. It's like, you know, we see a lot of things online and numbers that are so fabricated, but TikTok is one of the few places where I feel like for the most part, it's pretty hard to fake those things. Like you can see when it's fake. You can, and more so than, getting on an editorial playlist, which isn't, it looks good, but it doesn't actually really doesn't really bring you fans in the same way. But it was all through TikTok. It was just like, as it is, crazy 15-second snippets of just a little message. But that's all it really takes to kind of communicate an emotion, I think, is a 15-second snippet. And eventually one of those songs came out. The other one I don't plan on releasing, but I am very grateful for both of those songs. So
Wow. Yeah, it is interesting to think like it only does take 15 seconds. I mean, I grew up and I was on the radio for a lot of years, and we'd pick songs that would make it on the air. And I mean, you could tell within, I mean, it's as bad as it sounds. I mean, you listen for a few seconds and you're like,
yeah,
okay, this is
yeah,
either going to work or it's not. And it's just so you can judge it so fast. And as terrible as it is, like that's people's attention span. It's like, if you don't rope them in pretty quickly, then it's okay, next person, next person. And to be able to do that and catch them in
yeah.
15 seconds.
It's a huge thing. If you don't mind me asking, who did you grow up listening to? Do you have like a favorite?
I'm from San Diego, and I like the pop punk scene, and that was a big deal. So I like Green Day was the first band I really loved, and
Mhm.
Blink 182 came out of my town, so they were a big fan. Like, I was a big fan of them, but I also grew up on like a lot of like hip hop. I liked like
Mm.
Wu Tang and Gangstar, stuff like that, and even into like older classic rock. I grew up
Yeah,
on like the Beatles were big in my household. My sister's name is Abby after Abbey Road, and
it's amazing.
yeah, so that's kind of like what I grew up on, and I still love it all. But I love all music, and it's just interesting. I love finding new songs and new artists, and just seeing this whole uh right, because I didn't have social media and stuff growing up. That's
Yeah,
not how people discovered bands. And to see this and see how people are able to really make a career and grow a fan base based off of just having, like we said, a level playing field. Like you could just go on this app and
do
do
it.
something, and
Yeah,
the more people that are engaging with it, the more it's going to feed it to more and more people.
yeah, yeah. It's a really cool thing if you just embrace it, embrace the change of the music industry instead of fight against it. But yeah,
Yeah, a lot of people are fighting against it, I feel like, instead
yeah,
of just trying to, you know,
yeah,
adapt to kind of
yeah,
what's happening. Well, with
yeah.
your new song, Elephant in the Room, you tell me about this, because the song came out today, but it's had like millions upon millions of views and interaction with it, obviously well before it came out.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. I just made a little post about it, just reminiscing. I found the original voice memo of it, and I was sitting in my stairwell. I write songs mostly in like stairwells or parking garages, just anywhere with cool ambient reverb. And I was sitting in my stairwell on August 1st, this past August 1st, and this melody and a few lines just kind of wandered into my head. I don't, it always happens that way. I don't really know how to describe it. Just 1 second, it's not there. And then the next second, the idea of a song is there, and it will never uncreate itself. It always exists after that moment, even if you never do anything with it. But um, this melody and this line kind of wandered into my head, and it was very reminiscent of what kind of the person in my life who I really cared about at that time had been telling me for so long. She had been maybe not even verbally, but just in her actions, been telling me that she was not the same person, and that she needed space to go figure out who she was again, and that I needed to let her go. And I think we loved each other so much that was really hard to do, and I didn't I didn't accept that and still don't accept it as much as I wish I could for her sake. But so the song was being almost written from her perspective. It was like I was writing down everything she was saying to me, and it was very, very interesting. It was almost a way to process it without having to accept it. And so the song kind of just started to write itself. And while the perspective is a little strange because sometimes it jumps to my perspective, for the most part the song is from her perspective, as a lot of my songs are. She's a very, very emotionally intelligent person, and the way she says things is so clear and concise that it does inspire a lot of my songs. So this one was no different. But what was different about this one was after I recorded it and posted it, millions of people saw it. And not only did they see it, but they connected with it, and connected with it in a way that was overwhelming. I mean, it was reading these messages, I was like, wow, we are all in very similar situations all across the world, all different walks of life, but yet this common feeling of just almost ignoring the fact that something doesn't exist anymore, and ignoring the fact that somebody is in pain. That is a common thing. And sometimes we pretend it's because, you know, we love them so much and we're doing it for them. But I don't know. It was challenging, and it's hard that, you know, that I had to find that out the hard way, and that I kept holding on to her for so long, which definitely hurt her more. But I am grateful that I had that experience, because if not, the song would not be here, and it really has helped a lot of people already. And I don't know. So anyway, that's kind of the short of how that song was created. But
Wow. And when you put the clip up, was the song done? Like you had it already complete and ready?
yeah,
Because I've heard other artists say that they'll put a snippet up and then it's like, oh, I have to like go finish this now because this one piece just went crazy.
that's me 99% of the time. But this song actually was finished when I put it up.
Okay.
But I will say, that this song was teased in August, or I wrote it in August. It was teased September 1st, and it came out today, which many people are upset about for good reason. That is a long time for a song to explode to it coming out. It sadly got stuck in a lot of very frustrating legal issues, and I was told many times that this song would never come out, like many, many times by people who kind of have the authority to say that. But this was kind of my first example of stepping back and saying, like, you know what? No, like, I need to set the precedent that if I believe in something, I will fight for that. And so again, I probably was just the most annoying, nagging person, but I just decided, you know what, if the song can't come out, let's just blow it up even more. So I just kept posting it, and it kept getting bigger, and eventually kind of forced the hand to go solve the fun legal issues that presented themselves. And now the song is here 5 months later or whatever, which is, I'm not, you know, it's all unfolding how it's supposed to. So
I love that. That's awesome. Well, I'm
fun.
gonna show you that yeah, that it needs to be
Yeah.
out. That's so good.
Yeah.
Well, you have, you know, a handful of songs out now, and this one just came out today. And do you have like in mind, is there like a full project or a body of work you're going to put out with all these songs, or you have more singles that are going to be coming out as well, or what do you have going on coming up?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, I've been talking a lot with my team about it the past few weeks. There's definitely an EP worth of songs. It's challenging for me because, you know, it's for me, the priority is the story and telling the story. But for people like the label, the priority is, you know, like creating a cohesive, short, well streaming EP, which, you know, is not ideal. But it also is, I understand. So right now it's kind of just trying to find the compromise of, all right, how do I tell the story I want to tell while also not making it too long to where it wouldn't, I don't know, do what it's supposed to do. But I think right now I'm just compiling an EP, and it will come out in the next few months. And, you know, it's just the beginning. It's like, it's kind of crazy. There's a lot of pressure always on like your first EP or your first album, but I can tell there's going to be many, many of these down the road for me. And so I'm really excited to get this first one out. And I think there's a lot of songs that just tell a really beautiful story, and that is definitely a priority for me to get that out. So
I think that's awesome. Like you're so how passionate you are about making sure that there's a story behind it, you know, and some meaning there, where instead of just finding like those notebooks from high school and being like, oh, these are some cool lyrics, let's just
Yeah.
slam something to it and make another song. It's like, well, I want to sit with this and make sure I
Yeah.
remember kind of where my headspace was when I wrote all this down before I even dive
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
I just think that's a cool like outlook, and I don't think.
No, and it's like these are really sacred things to me. These are topics of my actual relationships and pain I've gone through, and it feels so unfair to just put them out for the strict purpose of like monetizing them. And so at the least I can do is give them a fair platform to like show the whole story arc of my relationship. And that's just super important to me and for the people involved, because it's not just me that I'm writing these songs about, it's other people, and I really want to make sure they feel good about everything. So
I love that, man. That's awesome. And you're so well spoken. I can't believe you're only 19 years old, man.
yeah.
Uh but dude, I love what you're doing. And I appreciate your time today. Are you doing any live shows?
Yeah, live is definitely the next. I'm starting to kind of piece it together and figure out what songs sing well. I'm very much hopefully will open up for somebody this year, but then I also would love to go on a, it's going to sound a little strange, but like a parking garage tour across the US and play in parking garages, just like a guitar and me.
Oh, I
And
love that idea.
I there's a lot of logistics to figure out. So I'm definitely, but I'm putting it out into the universe by saying it here. So to keep myself accountable. But anyway, so this year will be the year to start all the live shows. But yeah, so yeah.
Very cool, man. Well, thank you again for doing this. I have one more quick question. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yeah, I would say it's interesting. We all have our own situations, so I always am hesitant to give advice and receive advice because it's very much only applicable to your own situation. But I guess if I had to give any advice, it's just nobody's going to believe in something if you don't believe in it first. And I think I stand by that. It's just you'll never go past your biggest dreams, your biggest goals. So you might as well set the most unrealistic, insane goals. And then even if you fall short of those, you'll probably be the biggest artist on the planet. So it's just, just believe in it. And also, I don't know, create out of necessity for saying something and create for yourself. It's like the second you start to create for anybody else or start to say the things that you think people want you to say, it's funny how counterproductive that is and how just people will stop relating to it and resonating with it. So anyway, that's the only advice I could give, but I don't know. Don't listen to me.